Hello everyone! Welcome to another Vibrant Music Teacher chat. Please say hi in the chat as soon as you get here. For long-time viewers, long-time attendees, I don't know, you, especially if you came along last week, you might be thinking, oh, she said she was going to be back in the office today, if you're really paying attention. But we've actually stuck with the piano. It was just simpler for today's setup, so that's what we're going with. So yeah, I'm still in my teaching room. This is where I teach every day. Juliet is here. Hi Juliet. She said looking forward to this chat as we were talking about how to include composition in the huddles today. So Juliet is a member of Vibrant Music Teaching, which means that she had the opportunity to attend a huddle, which is our Zoom meetup for members earlier today, and they were talking about composing. So we're continuing that chat now, which is great. Tanya said, haven't done a lot of composing. I've used the fiction composing project with one of my students and it has been a good experience. Great to hear that, Tanya. Welcome Rachel, welcome Karen, welcome Wilma. If you're joining us and you haven't said hi yet, please do. I would love to hear from you. So today we are talking about composing. I'm going to share with you 7 different ideas for how to teach composing. I've got 3 that are like quickies and then 4 that are more longer term project type things that you would do over several weeks with students. Welcome Tiffin and Carrie. Hello, hello. Great to see you. So let me know what's going on in your studio right now. As you may have been able to guess, right now we are doing a composing project in my studio. So we're doing the newest one, which I will tell you about later on, and it's going to be available to members on the 14th on Valentine's Day. It's a little Valentine's gift, I guess. So that is the popish pop song composing project. I think I might have put in an extra pop there, but you get what I'm saying. Welcome Music Kitchen, welcome Abby, welcome Karen. Another Karen. I wasn't doubling up on Karens, there are 2. Yeah, so that one is coming out really soon, 14th, so next week basically. And it's a really fun one. So I'll get to that sort of at the end. That's kind of the last method of composing, but there's lots of other ways you can do it. A couple of reminders, announcements for you. First of all, we went through this guy last week. So this is concept collection number 1. It's all music that is in 6 flats. So E flat minor or G flat major. I keep almost saying those backwards when I talk about this book. That's 5 fabulous composers within it, and as I said, we did it on the last YouTube live, so you can go back and watch last week's video if you want a preview and some like teaching tips for the pieces and that kind of thing. And yeah, it's really fun. It's only available for 2 months though, so I'm going to keep mentioning it just in case you forget to order your hard copies and then you're like, no, it's expired. So you can order hard copies on the Colourful Keys site in the shop there. So you can order hard copies there no matter whether you're a member or not. If you are a member, make sure to grab your discount code because you can enter that and get an even greater discount. It's already pretty good value with the 5 composers included, but you'll get a discount there if you're a member, so make sure to include that. And members only can access the digital edition as well, which is a studio licensed digital edition that is in the library now, so you can just go and grab it. Both of those expire, they disappear completely in April. It's only live for February and March, and at the end of March it will disappear. And it won't be an April Fool's, it'll just be gone. So make sure you go get it. If you're a member, download your digital edition, save it somewhere safe. If you're not a member, or if you are, go get your hard copies from the site. And they look like this. I think they're beautiful. So the other little announcement is about the masterclass we have coming up, which is totally relevant to what we're talking about today. So we have a masterclass coming up on the 22nd. It's at 1 p.m. my time, so it's a little bit earlier than this show. If you can see what time this show is at, that'll give you an idea. It's morning time in the US, or afternoon over in Europe, or very late if you're in Asia or Australia, New Zealand, that kind of area. So you can sign up for that at the link which is in the description. I've popped it in the description for you, and you just need to sign up there. It's totally free. Members and non-members can attend. For members, the direct link to join will be in the calendar as well if you want to just join from there. And for members as well, you will get access to the replay afterwards. So that's uploaded normally within a couple of hours, and then you can watch it at any stage. What I'm going to be doing in that masterclass is talking you through all of the steps in the pop song composing project, which we're releasing next week, and how I approach them with students and giving you some tips and that kind of thing. Just laying it all out. Awesome stuff. So Pam just downloaded the 6 Flats concept book. That's awesome to hear, Pam. Laura says, good morning. Welcome, Laura. Denise is using the micro composition booklets. Awesome. Yes, very much more manageable. So great to provide that option for you. And Lisa said, good morning. Welcome, Lisa. And Rachel said she's doing the tiny finger takeoff with twins. Oh, that's so fun. Love to hear that, Rachel. Okay, so we're going to dive into my composing ideas, starting with the mini ones. So these are all ideas to include composing in your regular piano lessons. And in my studio, we do composing every year as part of a big project. We do smaller composing items like this periodically, but not with like a systematic approach. Whereas with the big composing project, we do it once a year. It's this time of year, so that's January to like March-ish is when we're working on that. And every student in the studio, pretty much, bar maybe the odd adult student, composes a piece of music. It's like a full piece, and we notate it in MuseScore, we put it into notation software, and it's a big project. And then we put together a book. It's one of the gifts that I give student every year. It's kind of a bonus thing that they get this book. And a student the other day was actually mentioning that she'd gotten out her old one, like she'd happened across one of the oldest ones we had released, and she opened it up and was showing her brother that she had composed this piece. Like she was like, that's my name, that's me. And her brother totally thought she was messing with him. And she had to convince him, no, I wrote this piece, like this actually happened. So I thought that was a really funny story. But if a big project like that isn't your jam, it just won't fit into your studio year, or it's not something you want to do every year like us, it is a big commitment, then some mini ideas can be a great way to go, and they can also fill in the time in between. So this is a great way to just get across to your students, hey, you can write music too, and use them as a way of working on music theory in a way that's really palatable to students, right? So idea number 1 is to teach your students to compose using scales. So every time you introduce a scale, you can then teach your students to compose with it. So the first time you'll need to help them out a little bit, right? So every scale you introduce, let's say they've just learned the C scale. If you're not familiar, in my studio, we do all of this through improvisation first. So we would always have improvised in the key of C and several other keys before they meet the scale fingering. But when they do then get to meet the scale fingering, and they're learning one hand probably, if they're just meeting the C scale for the first time, then they meet that on the first lesson. Maybe we notate it on our little blank keyboard diagrams, and then we talk about composing with it. And I get them just to mess around with it. Maybe we do some improv again. And anytime they play a little nugget of an idea that sounds a little bit melodic, let's say they play, okay, then I write that down for them if this is the first time they're doing it. And I show them, okay, I've written down your idea, what could come after that? And that's when I would start to get them to write it themselves, whatever the next bit is going to be. So starting with them composing it, I think is a great idea, with you notating it, and them just freehand improvising with it. And then as they get a bit comfortable with the idea and you've kind of started it off for them, so like you've drawn the treble clef for them or whatever, and you've drawn the first few notes so they kind of know where they are, then they can write it all down from there. They can start to be the one to notate all of it. So composing with scales just helps them get in the zone with composing right away, and also further obviously reinforces their idea of the scale, because scales are not just about going up and down in a particular pattern, they're about understanding music theory and the building blocks of music. So getting them to compose something right away with that scale just the treble clef, just simple, you know, just a melody, could be the bass clef as well, but just a simple melody, and I'm talking like 2 to 4 bars and it's done. If you do this with a few scales, their first few scales, you can then start to assign this at home for them to do at home. Now, I don't recommend assigning it right away because they will not follow through because it's just way too hard. That's way too big a barrier. You know, if they haven't been writing music much or at all, you might think that they would be able to approach it just from being a good reader, but they often won't get it. When they go to write it down themselves, they might put notes in completely the wrong places, and definitely their note stems will be too short, right? They're always too short. Hardly anyone does them too long. So yeah, the first few times do it together in the lesson with you coaching them through writing it and writing a few notes for them. And then you can start to assign this and they can build up this little bank of melodies based on their scales. Now, another way to approach this kind of thing based on scales and things like that is the micro composition mini books, which Denise mentioned earlier in the chat there. So the micro composition mini books are just a really simple, accessible way to approach this. They are not all based on scales, although one of the levels does focus on that, but they start even easier than that, you know, finger number pieces or composing based on letter names and going from there. So if you need an easy in and you're a VMT member, you can just go look for the micro composition mini books and start there. And you can just do one assignment each week. At first, do them together in the lesson a few times and then start assigning them, and your students will build up this amazing repertoire of, like, amazing bank of little melody nuggets that they've written. Another way to do this is through the Circle of Fifths Odyssey. So that is a course of ours, and in that course I recommend composing all along the way as well. So what the Circle of Fifths Odyssey does is it means your students are improvising their way around the circle of fifths. And if they also compose at the same time, maybe as the homework to go along with the in-lesson improvisation, they will just absorb so much more from that, and they'll understand key signatures, the whole circle of fifths relationship. It'll be wonderful. Yeah, by the way, actually, we do have, yeah, it is out already. We do have some blank music notation, like just a printable in the library, so you can go grab that if you don't have manuscript on hand or you don't want to buy some. You can just print it out yourself there. Okay, so that is idea number 1, composing from scales. Idea number 2, which is still a quick and easy idea, is to start with chord patterns. So I teach all my students, all my older students, chord patterns right at the start of their lesson. This is something we do in the creative kickstart plans, actually. So what I like to do is teach my students, well, okay, I tend to teach them this one first. So just a 1, 6, 4, 5. We do that quite slowly and we practice doing it 4 times on each. Okay, that's just something I always teach, especially new adults or new teen beginners, or just teens who need a break from whatever other work they've been doing. And then I transition them to learning the more ubiquitous 1, 6, 4, no, 1, 5, 6, 4. I said the previous one by mistake. So all of these are just in root position. The reason I do this one first with beginners is it is just a little bit easier to navigate. But then once they're used to that, we do that. And I tend to then go around and do that in lots of keys, especially if I have a student who wants to learn pop songs or is sort of angling that way. We'll basically work our way around the circle of fifths just doing that chord progression in each key over 12 or so weeks, depending on how they go with it. And what you could do all along that way is have your student compose something to go on top of those chords. So that way they would build a sense of the scales. For this, I would then, if I was going to do this, I would take the chords into the left hand. So where I was doing it before was just the root plus the chord, but I would actually do chord in the left and just simple block chords, holding them for the full bar and then playing a few notes in the right hand. Yeah, and they write that down and then whatever they want to play next, right? If you've noticed I'm using the pedal, that's just instinctive. I wouldn't necessarily have students right at the beginning doing this with pedaling. I do have them experiment with it, but it depends how they go. So that is if you want to compose using chords. I think that's a great way to approach it with adult students, and again, reinforce what they're learning. A lot of adults will be more comfortable then because they have seen it written down, especially if they come from a more classical background and they're trying to get into playing pop, etc. Then being able to write it down so they can at least see that, even if we're encouraging them to play it without the music in front of them, they will be able to then see their chord pattern. And yeah, just associating the chords and the scales together the whole way. So that could be a great little homework assignment for them. Composing 4 bars in each of the keys as they learn them in those patterns, or any other chord pattern that you're doing with them. Okay, idea number 3, which is another mini idea, is stealing. Okay, so this is where we take something from one of the songs they're already doing, or one of the pieces they're already doing, and then have them mess around with it and make their own composition based on it. Okay, so a simple example, a student the other day would not stop playing Ode to Joy when she was supposed to be doing her composing. So you can take that and run with it. You can say, okay, that's great. Let's start by just stealing that from Beethoven, and then let's mess with it. Let's come up with different iterations, right? So she was playing it in G. Okay, how could we change it? So you can start by just inverting it, just do the opposite. See what that sounds like. Do we like that? If so, then run from there and compose the next part entirely by yourself. What comes next? Or maybe you add some passing tones, not so good in Ode to Joy, but maybe we omit the passing tones. So instead of, we're doing, I'm just giving random examples, but messing with something that they already know can be a great place to start, especially, sorry if you can hear the ice cream van, by the way. It goes around all year. So it can be a great place to start from, especially for your students who are like nervous about composing, just are really indecisive. You know, you have those students who you ask them to write something down, and they're like, yeah, and they just keep playing like random notes over and over and different, and then they change it again, and they won't write anything down, commit to anything. This can be great for them as well. And another way you can, of course, mess with that is to mess with the tonality as a starting point. So instead of, right, make it a minor Ode to Joy, and then change it a little bit more and change it a little bit more, change the rhythms. And before you know it, you do have something that is totally their own, right? We're not just going to steal from Beethoven, of course. Okay, so those are my mini ideas. So we got starting with scales, chords, or stealing little ideas. With all of those, feel free to make them short. They're just 4 bars long, 4 measures long. That's all you need. You don't need it to be some massive project for it to be worthwhile. Then my maxi ideas, okay? So the bigger ones that are more like projects like we do here once a year. We do a big concerted effort where we're doing it pretty much every week for like 12 weeks, but only a few minutes per lesson, obviously. So for those, there's different ways to start the composing process. And in most of the projects that you'll find in Vibrant Music Teaching, and also the project you'll find on the Colourful Keys blog, you can download as a freebie there, we've taken a melody first approach, okay? So that's where I get the student to start by composing what I call an A melody to them. They compose that, try to keep it simple, you know, stop them from jumping around all the place, but they compose that and it's for the right hand and it's the melody. And then they compose the B melody that's going to go with that, B motif, whatever you want to say. And then we put that into a form So A, B, B, A, or whatever, they kind of just choose those at random. And then we add the chords underneath that. We add the dynamics, we give it a title, we add the tempo mark, so that kind of thing. So that starts with melody first. So if you want to try that approach, you can find our projects, there's loads of them. Fantastic Fiction is based on fiction. Circus Collective, there's the Spring Themes, that was the first one I ever did. And there's definitely one more, but I'm not thinking of it right now. Oh, Animal Menagerie. Okay, so there's loads of options there for that, where you can do it in many different ways. But you don't have to start with the melody. So another way to start with this would be to start with the rhythm. Come up with the rhythm first. And it's good to mix these up. Don't always do it the same way. So starting with the rhythm, you could start with something like the rhythm vocab cards, and take like a few of them. You can pull them at random or have your student choose from the pack of rhythm vocab cards. If you're not familiar with those, by the way, those are just one bar of rhythm on every card, and the entire set is in one time signature, so they fit together really nicely. So you could take a couple of those and start with that, and then you start messing around with how the notes go. A lot of students initially will, so say the pattern, the card says tum ti ta ta, right? Dotted crotchet, quaver, crotchet, crotchet, or dotted quarter note, eighth, quarter, quarter, yeah? A lot of students will do, and then change on the next bar. Like, they're not really getting how rhythm and melody fits together, so that's a great learning opportunity. They will especially do it if you have a pair of quavers, a pair of eighth notes. They will tend to do the same, so they'll go like ta, ti, ti, ta, ta. And it's like, why would the TT have to be the same note? It's often not in your music. So great little learning opportunities there. But yeah, again, starting with the rhythm, and starting with the rhythm, when they do that, they might instinctively come up with some kind of a chord, even just a two-note chord, right? And then, okay, great, that's going to be the left hand, or that's going to be the harmonic part, and then we come up with the melody from there. But the rhythm is the first part. Or we could start with an ostinato pattern. So here's where you could definitely steal from pop songs again if you want to, and then mess with it. Or you could come up with your own. But a lot of modern pop songs are actually just a repeating ostinato or riff in the bass. And that's what the whole song is based on. And that's what makes it catchy. So classic one. Anyone recognize this? I'm sure someone can identify that in the chat. But you could take that and then just take the rhythm of it and maybe the general pattern, but mess with the notes. So it could be, I'm just making it up at random there. Or you can mess with it more, going down instead of up, and then up instead of down, right? So yeah, those kinds of patterns are what's going to make it sound like modern music that they really love in most cases. So that's a great place to start as well. And then the final place to start is with your chords first. Okay, so if we're starting with chords first, that is the approach we're taking in the pop song composing project. So again, if you want to attend the masterclass for that, you can sign up totally free in the description, and I'll be going through the whole process. And you can also download the project as a VMT member. You can download it from next week, the 14th. So starting with chords is a really interesting place to start. What we're doing in that project is we're starting with chords and going through to the melody and even the lyrics in the chorus, and then doing the same thing for the verse. So what we have students do is we have them play just the chords in their key. I've given them their key. So they play the chords going up their key. Let's say they were given D, okay? Like that. And we write those down. So they figure out whether each one is major or minor. And we write those down in a row. And then they start messing around with picking 3 to 5 of those chords. Just trying them in different orders. and seeing what they like the sound of. And that becomes the foundation of their song. So they're starting from the chord pattern first. And this does tend to, having this kind of repeating chord pattern will tend to make it much more likely that it sounds like, again, a modern pop song. So they come up with their chord pattern, and then on top of that, they're writing their melody. Okay, so once they have their chord pattern, they're starting to write their melody and then coming up with the lyrics to go with that. As I said, in the pop song project, they're doing that for the chorus, the entire chorus. Then they're doing that for the entire verse. And then if they want a bridge or an intro or anything, they do that for that, and then we put it all together. So at the moment, my students are composing their choruses. We're kind of at the beginning of the project. We just started it towards the end of January. So we're a couple of weeks in. And yeah, it's great to approach it from a different angle. So again, those different approaches for your bigger composing projects, we're starting with the melody, starting with the rhythm, starting with an ostinato pattern, repeating riff, whatever you want to call it, or starting with a chord pattern. So let me know which ones of those you've tried, and if you've any questions about the whole composing process. It's something that we love to do in my studio, and it's something we really look forward to every year, but it is a big time investment for us. So it's something I'm aware of when I'm planning stuff for the year. We're going to be doing this big project, and it is going to take time away from other things. You know, I'm not going to add a recital, for example, in March because we have this. Now, I could move things around if I really wanted to do a March recital, but you get what I'm saying. I have to plan for it because we couldn't fit in this and preparing for a performance and still making good progress through a method book or something. It's just too much. So to give you an idea, this does take 10 to 15 minutes out of our buddy lesson time for a few weeks, and then once they're up and running, it takes less time. It will also take less time the older your students are, because they can do some of it more independently, but we love doing it during our buddy lesson time. So that's where we have two students together for part of their lesson, overlapping lessons, so they share part of their lesson. And I love doing it during that time because when I've done it with solo students, as a teacher, you are involved in the process and you're helping them, and they won't be able to do it at home by themselves, but you don't actually have to be holding their hand every step of the way. They do have to have some working out time. So you're not like hyper busy for all of that time. Whereas if you have two buddy students together, or even we have one group of 3, it's very easy for them to all, it sounds like a big mess because they're all working things out at the same time on the pianos, and we don't put on headphones, but it works great, and it's just a way better use of teacher time in my view. However, if you don't have students in that circumstance, that's absolutely fine. Another idea would be, though, for some of your students who need a little bit more guidance than just like reading the project themselves and actually completing the step at home, you could record a video to further explain the process and have that in as attached to their assignment. If you want to encourage them to complete more of it at home, but you think they need a bit more hand-holding, right? Laura said, I love rhythm first for the younger students because they often struggle to get the correct number of beats in a bar when that is not defined. Yes, often with the rhythm, that is where I am helping the most between my buddy students when we're working on a project. That's where I'm helping the most because they just will stop thinking about the time signature. Even students who are quite competent otherwise, they'll just like throw it out of their head. And for example, the student the other day he was in 4/4, and his melody, his chord pattern is all lovely, and then his melody was a minim rest, so a half rest, a group of 3 quavers, 3/8, and another group of 3/8. And like, this student is so good with rhythm. It was just like, no, that doesn't fit. Not that I said it like that, but you know, we have to rearrange this. Also, they wouldn't be grouped like that, but that's a side note. We have to rearrange this, we have to make it work. So when it comes to that, and you're not going from a rhythm first approach, which as Laura mentioned would help with the situation, I just give them choices. I'm like, okay, so either this is going to the next bar, and that's fine. your rest at the start is not actually a minimum rest, or maybe this pattern is faster and it's actually like tikati or something like that. So working out what they want to do, but I tend to just give a few options when students kind of walk themselves into a corner and it isn't making sense, so that we don't end up, you know, with a changing meter or whatever, because that's not normally what they're actually playing. Yeah, once we come down to it. So fully listening to what the student is really playing and helping them to figure out how that sounds on the staff is I think a great part of the process. Really valuable, really helps them understand rhythm in a new way, and is also the hardest part for most students, is getting the rhythm to make sense. You know, they can draw the notes in the right place, but getting the rhythm to make sense is harder. Just going back through the comments to see what ones I missed here. Carrie said, my studio theme this year is music is my superpower. Next month's superpower is composing. I love it. Abby said, play through the whole 6 Flats collection yesterday and had a great time explaining the irregular meters in some of the pieces to my non-musical husband. Yeah, it's fun, right? Thank you, Stacey, for that. And Darren, actually. They both chose some unusual meters. Gillian said, enjoyed the pieces in 6 Flats collection. It is an interesting idea to pull a series of pieces together in one key to familiarise students. Yeah, and those collections are not going to be all like one key. I just wanted to start there because it's one of my favourite keys, and also one of students' least favourite keys. So I was like, this is what we're starting with. But the next one is actually going to be about the other pedals, in case you missed that, Gillian. So that's really fun. That's going to be about the unicorda and ostinato pedals. Sailor Auntie said, do you let the student use a music notation software for this? So I am interested in the word let here. So I'll just answer it clearly. I don't let them use music notation software instead of writing it out themselves, if that's what you meant. They have to write it out manually by hand, at least a lot of it. And if they're a younger student, we're notating it for them. Or they might do a few notes and then we take over to save some time, because it takes a long time for younger students to write out the notes correctly. However, they do then after that put it into music notation software. So I have all my students age roughly 9 or over put it into notation software themselves during the lesson. So again, this is where I have buddy students generally, and one student is like figuring something out in their composition at the piano, and then the other one could be putting it in to the computer, what they've got, and then they figure out the next bit and they kind of swap over. So I do have them do that, and then for the younger students I input it for them, just because using a mouse and stuff is challenging. Oh, nice, Denise. I'm currently teaching Sunrise over the Savannah to a new student who loves the sustain pedal. Yeah, I love that. Okay, Gillian, great that you're looking forward to it. Okay, guys, I am going to wrap it up. So I'm going to choose our winner for this week. I'm going to do a random slide up and down. I'm not looking. You're my witness. I'm not looking. Okay, I have landed on Laura Gray. So, Laura, if you're still here, I think you are. Just give me a thumbs up or a yep in the chat there, and I will draw your prize from my magical wheel. So this is my beautiful wheel. Here we go. This is what Laura's going to win. Oh, same as last week actually. Digital stickers. So Laura, if you email support@vibrantmusicteaching.com, support@vibrantmusicteaching.com, email us that, let us know you won the digital stickers, and we will send them through to you. Thank you all so much for joining me. Before I let you go completely, can I ask you a favor? Could you hit subscribe if you haven't already? It was actually our YouTube channel's birthday today, apparently, according to YouTube. Not something I keep track of, but it was our YouTube channel's birthday today, and close after the birthday, it would be really nice to hit that 10k mark. It's just a silly number. I don't care much about these things, but it still would be nice to have that nice next, the 5 figures. It'd be nice. as a little marker of our birthday. So if you haven't subscribed already, please do. Just hit that subscribe button. It means you'll find out when we post our next video, and it shows YouTube that you value our channel and the videos that I put out there for you. Next week we're going to be off. I have a week off school, I was about to say, but lessons is what I meant. So I'm going away next week. It's a midterm break over here in Ireland, and we will be publishing a video at the same usual time on the Wednesday, but it'll be a pre-recorded one. So we'll be back with the live show the week after that. I'll see you all then.